she said, "You seem to understand your husband's mental condition." And I said, "Yes, I do." And
Mm.
she said, "You better figure it out because it's going to get worse." And at that point, after that session, I went down and I bought a drink.
Some stories are written to entertain, others are written to heal. Not just the author, but the reader too. Today's guest, CF Mickey, lived through 33 years in a narcissistic marriage. What began as a life she thought would be filled with family, farming, and love turned into years of manipulation, control, and painful challenges. But through journaling, reflection, and sheer courage, she began to connect the dots, not only about her marriage, but also about herself. That journey became her book, a deeply personal story of survival, awareness, and hope. In it, she shares not only lived experiences, but practical cheat sheets to help others recognize the red flags, find safe ways forward, and step into healing. Today, she's not just a survivor, she's a mother, grandmother, farm lover, and a woman living with good intentions and a new sense of freedom. Kathy, welcome to Positive Vibes.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I really enjoy this opportunity to be able to share my experiences and hope that it'll benefit other people that are questioning their position and will help them through their journey.
Yeah, no, we're happy to have you. So, just on that, Kathy, can you take us back to when you first started journaling? What made you begin writing, and when did you realize it was turning into a book?
Well, I started journaling um, after different court processes. I kind of felt frustrated, and I would come home and I would write it all down, and I was getting a sense of relief. And when you
Mm,
go to see the counselor, um, and different therapists always recommend to journal.
mm,
And I was getting relief doing this, and I thought, okay, I have to go back and find out where this all started so I can prevent it in the future.
mm,
And I started writing down everything. And then I thought, no, the pieces aren't fitting together. So I had to go back to my childhood
mm.
and
Okay.
connect the dots. And once it was all going down on paper, it made sense.
Mm,
So now I know where I'm at and how I got here, and I can prevent a relationship like this in the future.
yeah. So, just on that, just on your phrase there, how did you get there? So, what answers along the way did you discover how you got there?
Well, I do realize when I was younger, my boundaries were getting stripped
Mm,
down. Um, when my mom had left my dad, it was my brother and I, and she was busy working.
mm,
And so we were fairly young when we were coming home and cooking our dinner and going back to school. And then when my stepdad came into the picture, a lot of those boundaries were stripped away, like the independence, you know, everyday decisions.
mm,
He would come home and it was us to run his bath water, put his t-shirt and shorts on the toilet, serve him his glass of milk. And that was not how our earlier years were. We were very independent. And that time changed, and our home revolved around him,
mm,
not so much as a family unit, but it revolved around him. And I
mm.
believe that's where my boundaries started coming down.
Yeah. So Just further into your marriage, was there a moment when you realised your husband's behaviour was more than difficult, that it was connected to a narcissistic personality disorder?
Probably the first indication that really stood out for me was after we were married and I had a child from a previous relationship. We went out to the field to pick him up, and he always criticized my driving. And he was standing a ways away from the tractor. And I thought, well, I'll come in between him and the tractor, and he can hop in the driver's side and I'll move over. Well,
Mm,
then he started running for the tractor, and he got in the truck, and he he was hollering at me like he was enraged, like the stiff body and hollering right over my child at me that I tried running him over.
mm,
And I started laughing. We hadn't even been married a year.
mm,
And he was serious. And when I realized he was serious, that was holy okay. I think there's something wrong here.
mm,
And from that moment on, I always kind of kept searching for you're always searching, trying to put the pieces together. And our first married life with Christmas, his mom phoned me and said, "How's Brent doing?" And I said, "Not very well." And I'm thinking he had lost his dad, and
mm,
there's a lot of life changes. Is he missing him? Does he wish he saw his family or met his family? And she says, no, he always has difficulty this time of year. And
mm,
I noticed from about the middle of November to January, every year was very challenging for him.
mm. The cyclic, yeah. So you mentioned that you were living on the farm and raising your child. What was life like raising children and building a farm business while navigating this marriage?
He was happy if everybody was working.
Mm,
We had on the farm, everybody pitched in, even when it come to harvest. Our oldest did a lot of the cooking when the kids were little,
mm,
and I was on the combine, and he would drive truck. So everybody had a role, and as everybody got a little older, even our youngest was operating the combine and driving truck. So that that was yeah, if everybody was working, he was fine. But
mm,
then as we were acquiring more land and there was more challenges happening in the farming industry, uh, he would be easily triggered or depressed, or like I can remember the one year, um, he- at the end of September, we still had a few hundred acres to do, and the bushings and the bearings went in the combine. And I know that that was a job that he was hoping to redo in the winter.
mm,
And he's in the house and he is in bed and he's depressed. And at this time, we've been married for quite a few years, 20 some years. And I thought, do I coddle him and do I give him his attention, or do I just get out there and get things going? So I thought it's harvest time. We're
yeah,
down to the crunch and it's got to be done. So I picked up the phone. I started getting the mechanic out here, and I'm out there on the combine. The mechanic pulls in, then I see him come out.
mm,
And so once he came out, I kind of left because with two men there, they don't need me.
mm, yeah,
And so, but later on, when the mechanic went back to get the parts, we had a welder come, and Brent left, and I was with the welder, making sure that everything was getting done there.
mm, yeah. So
So
you stepped into that space and kept things moving on. Mm. So you
Yeah, I had to honestly, I had to early on when I was pregnant with our first child. It was February and we were without
mm,
water in the trailer.
no.
And on a Sunday, he said to me, "It's your job to fix it. You don't do enough around here."
Mm,
So I grabbed the phone book and I phoned an electrician, and luckily I got lucky. The first man I phoned, he came out on a Sunday and he needed help. Like he would have his meters and wires and he needed help.
yeah.
So I'm there in wintertime helping him. I'm pregnant. I don't even have a coat to cover my belly. And
Mm,
my husband's in the house. And by the end of the day, the water was working. I felt kind of powerful,
mm,
liberated that I can do this. I don't need your help. But then after, when you start thinking about it, and how wrong was that?
mm, yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, what kind
In
of man can do that?
Yeah, it's in that reflection when you're out of it that you think, well, yeah,
Yeah.
didn't see that at the time. So you've also shared that your husband told you, just leave, think of it as an adventure. How did those words change everything for you?
Um, it was gut wrenching,
Mm,
you know. When I married for love.
mm,
And I've been trying to decipher what's going on with him. And but he played a lot of mind games.
mm,
He played a lot of mind games. And it was almost like to push you to see how far he could push you.
mm,
And but then that sentence kept coming up and coming up. And then finally it got to a point and um, we were talking about splitting up. And he said, "Well, I'll just rent the land from you." Like it was just like, give me the boots to the curb and go on your adventure. And I've got everything here. And
mm,
I just said no. I said, if I'm leaving, I'm taking my share of the land.
mm,
And then I said to him, I treated him the same way he treated our son. And then I said, you can pay me rent in a heated house shop, you know, a heated tool shop. You can pay me rent on our house, on our bin space, on our farming equipment. And he just sat there and he didn't know what to say.
mm,
So then he kind of backed off a little bit. But then it came up again.
yeah.
Like I was in my own bedroom for about 2 years, and then he wanted me back, and I said only if the TV stays off. And it wasn't long, and the TV was back on, and he told me to go sleep in the other room. And I thought, I'm getting up and I'm leaving,
Mm,
and I'm never coming back.
mm. Sounds like you went through an enduring time throughout your marriage. What were some of the biggest red flags you see now that you missed back then?
The biggest red flag that I can't even say I missed it. It happened and it bothered me. And it still
Mm,
bothers me to this day. Our first date, we're going out to a restaurant and we get out of the truck. He doesn't open the door, he doesn't close the door, and then he takes off walking to the restaurant. And I'm trying to keep up to his strides to get into the restaurant.
yeah.
And then once we got in, we had a good sat down, had a good visit and everything. But it's getting to the restaurant and it's that whole demonstration of domination. Like,
Mm,
I'm first, you follow.
mm,
And I just thought, after we had split up and I was on my own, I went to the city with my daughter. And I'm driving. So she gets out of the vehicle and she stands in front of the vehicle waiting for me.
yeah.
Well, that was a trigger point for me because I've never ever had that in my whole married life. I
Mm.
never had somebody to walk in with me,
Yeah, yeah. Acts
you
of
know?
kindness. It's shows respect, but actual kindness and wanting to walk with you
Yeah, yeah.
alongside of you. Yeah, yeah,
So, and that was a major one. And I did confront him and mention it several times, but it wasn't, he didn't care,
yeah.
you
Mm.
know?
That must have been hard. Mm,
Yeah, yeah, it was. There was a lot of little things. And towards the end, he just seemed to be diving deeper into
mm,
this. And it got so that I couldn't talk about family problems with him or what my family was experiencing. If it
mm,
was any hardship, I would catch him smirking and smiling.
mm,
And and I can remember thinking, who does that? Like, who are you?
mm. Yeah. So
You
just
know?
on that, for someone who might not be familiar, what is narcissism and why is it so important to be aware of it?
Well, narcissism is is grandiose,
Mm,
entitlement. They need validation. Uh, and often they're envy of others. Like I
mm,
noticed with some people, if they're well to do more than us, then he would put them down. But then
mm,
if we were more uh, benefited more than some of the others, then he would put them down too. Um, yeah,
mm,
egocentrical, like his, you gotta feed it, but another thing is they have a low reciprocal for relationships. So they have they don't have the long endearing friends. And
mm,
most of their friends aren't local. They're people from a distance that don't see them every day.
mm,
And then you tend, as the age, you find that their friends will be quite a bit younger than them because the younger generation sometimes is not kind of keen on all the little key points of the mental state that he's in,
mm. So
you
just
know.
on that, you also just on the mental state and also the narcissism, you talk about concepts like triangulation, grey rocking, and even the dark tatard. Can you briefly share what this means and how they showed up in your life?
Okay. Triangulation is where he would pin me against one of the kids or one of the kids against one of the kids. And it's a means where he can control both parties.
Mm,
It's all about control.
yeah.
And gray rocking is something I got very good at. Um, that is where you don't respond. You don't respond, you don't feed into the games. Just you act like a rock.
Mm,
You listen, and that's it,
mm.
you know. Um, and what was the other term that you wanted to know?
The dark
Oh,
tatard.
yeah, the dark tetrad. That's got four, see if I can remember them. Sadism, and that is where they get enjoyment out of other people's hardships and misery.
Mm,
And Machiavellism, see if I got that down. Yeah, Machiavelli is, it's crafty, manipulative, playing games, that
mm,
whole sense. Um, Narcissism is the grandiose, entitled,
yeah.
I am who I am, and the psychopathy. So that is lacking empathy, lacking feeling, feeling for others, understanding the position, and just showing the love, you know? He
Mm,
he can't he can't do that. But one thing at the base of all of this narcissism is their lack of self-esteem.
mm,
Like they're very insecure people. So even though I've lived my life like this and gone through this, I've had to learn how to let go so
mm,
that I can move forward. And I don't like, I honestly don't hate the man for what he put us through because he's got a very dark future.
mm,
You know, I do feel sorry for him in a sense. And you got to be careful with that word sorry because you got to make sure that you don't get sucked into that type of a person again.
mm.
But yeah, like it's not
Yeah.
very good for him.
Yeah, it's just listening to your story, and how authentic you are, and also you sound like a true empath. It would be very hard not to get sucked back into that chapter again. So you've done healing. So what does healing look like for you now, and how do you stay grounded in your new chapter?
Well, when I wrote that book, I started writing that book as a healing process, and I joined a writers group, and I've been involved, just fantastic group of people, and they kept telling me how many other people are going through what you're going through.
Mm, yeah.
And even my counselor said, "Do you realize a lot of people don't have the strength to pull themselves out like
Mhm.
you did?" And that's when the book all started coming around, and 4 rounds of editing, and I was still getting emotional reading it.
Mm,
So now I feel good about everything. I am spreading the word on narcissism, and I'm trying to make people aware of the triggers, the signs,
mm,
because I was in my 28th year of marriage before I knew I actually had a name for what he had.
mm. Yeah.
And I think the term narcissist or narcissism, has just probably maybe about the last 10 years, or
Mm,
for my knowledge, has increased. And whether it's society or whether it was always there and nobody talked about it, I don't know.
yeah. Yeah. No, it is getting louder, and different types of narcissism. You've got covert narcissism, and yeah, so it is being talked about more so people can understand, and not think it's just them. So just on understanding, your book includes checklists, healing signs, and questions for therapists and lawyers. Why was it so important for you to include these practical tools?
Well, when I was kind of going through all of this, it would have been nice for me to have
Mm,
um, things to pay attention to.
yeah.
I do listen to Dr. Romani a lot, and I can remember one of her um, videos had commented to go silent, go to just walk away and go silent.
Mm,
And that is exactly what I did. And that helped me tremendously.
mm,
Even with the farming business, because I still had to do the books for the business, everything was through text or email. So they can't get at you. They can't. And he didn't know where I moved.
mm,
Like after so many times where he's saying, leave, just leave, think of it as an adventure. He's driving the semi with no legal license because his eyesight is failing, and the doctor's telling me that I have to keep reporting it to the RCMP so
mm,
that I'm covered liably.
mm,
And so there was a lot happening in this house, and I had to look after myself. So the one day, um, I guess previous to that, we were at the marriage counselor, and I said, the second session in, she pulled me in another room and she said, "You seem to understand your husband's mental condition." And I said, "Yes, I do." And
Mm,
she said, "You better figure it out because it's going to get worse." And at that point, I, after that session, I went down and I bought a journal and I journaled every day. I had dates, times, names. I had everything in it. I had mentally, I had to prepare. I had to prepare mentally to leave because physical violence was starting to become more common.
mm, yeah.
So so when I look at it, and I was shopping for a lawyer. I didn't know who to go to, or like I was on my own. And you don't want anybody knowing what you're doing. Um, and then when you go into these offices, well, what are some of the questions that you ask? Like you don't even
Mm,
think of some of, you know, and that those sheets, I think, are going to be a real help for anybody that's in this position. And the same as a therapist. Like you might have to interview a few different therapists and lawyers to find a connection.
mm,
And you know, the signs, the triggers, you know. Like I can remember being in at the doctor's office, and after he was off his meds, the doctor saying, "What's he doing now? What's he doing now?" So I'm telling him, and you know, I'm struggling myself. And he had me in there quite a bit, just kind of keeping an eye on me. And then finally he said to me, he said, "Katie, he's NPD."
mm,
Well, I didn't know what that was. And I had a appointment that afternoon with a counselor, and I'm out in the truck waiting to go in, and I Googled it, and I just broke down in tears. It wasn't 5 traits, it was all 10, and he
mm,
was very deep in all of that.
yeah.
So, you know, 28 years, I stayed in my marriage too long,
Mm,
and if I can help somebody else and help them along, I will, you
mm.
know?
Yeah, that's a tremendous act of kindness, what you've done, Katie, in regards to sharing your lived experiences, but also some wisdom and tools for others to also tap into. I'm sure there's a lot of listeners out there that can resonate with your story and would be, eager to find your book and see what tips they can, pull from your story that can help them. So just on sharing your story and your writing, how has sharing your story helped someone else?
Oh, I'm it's amazing the sense of community, the sense of feeling when you realize that you're not the only one,
Mm,
that other people are experiencing, and it might have different manners of the narcissism. You know, like I always say, it's like a onion. You peel back the layers and you figure out your specific case and how it affects you.
mm,
You know, and when you realize that you're not the only one in that boat, there is a sense of community there.
yeah.
And I do listen to quite a few different counselors, just educating myself on what I'm actually dealing with
Mm,
so that I make the best decision possible moving forward.
yeah. And what's the most empowering lesson you've taken away from your journey?
How important freedom is,
Mm,
and realizing that life is not always smooth.
mm,
We're given a path, and in that path is challenges along the way. And those challenges are meant to teach us. And that's what I've learned. I've
mm.
learned my strength and I've learned freedom.
Yeah. which are both beautiful, beautiful
Yeah.
to learn and beautiful to experience. So, Katie, can you share a mantra or a phrase you've turned to for strength?
Um, I had to, to train my brain to control my emotions.
Mm,
That is one thing that I have learned.
mhm, mm,
And honestly, going to the counselors and that it's amazing what you can learn in handling stress. Excuse me, handling stress and moving forward.
mm,
Like they are a real asset.
mm. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm sure a lot of listeners have resonated with that mantra there. And is there a moment of joy from your farm or family that keeps you smiling?
When I see the grandkids coming out
Mm,
and enjoying the farm, that warms my heart.
yeah.
I've got one granddaughter that when she gets to the farm, she wants to stay at the farm. And then her dad will be phoning her, "Are you ready to come home yet?" "No, pick me up in a month." And then I said to her, I said, "What do you like about the farm?" And she said, "Space."
Mm,
She's 8 years old. And that's what she said. She says, "I like space."
mm,
I think sometimes, in our busy lives and activities and school and everything, sometimes we just don't take enough time to just quiet.
yeah.
And I believe that that is a place for the farm.
Mm, yeah. And usually with space, it's that sense of freedom that feeling comes with it as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, Katie, where can listeners connect with you and find your book if they'd like to learn more?
I'm at www.cultivatingfreedom.ca. And on that website, there will be a link for my book, and all my latest podcasts will be on that website. Just subscribe, and you will get notifications of the latest podcasts.
Mm,
I wrote a chapter in a compilation book that's getting launched in October. And that chapter is dealt on the after effects of narcissism abuse
mhm.
and some of the factors that um I guess I'm working on
Yeah.
and improving, because you can't live a life with someone like that and not need extra help and work
Mm,
on yourself to become back to where you were.
mm.
better better
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll look forward to seeing that one and reading that one. I'm sure it's going to be a very wise story from you and lots of tools in there also for others to heal as well. So, just on that, for someone listening right now who may feel stuck in a or is stuck in a toxic relationship right now, what's one message you want them to hear?
Get a counselor.
Hmm.
Get a counselor. They will help you work through it, um, for your best peace of mind and your decisions moving forward. That's number one, is get a counselor.
Mm. Well, Katie, thank you for your courage and for sharing your journey with such honesty. You've shown us while narcissistic abuse can leave deep scars, healing is not only possible, it can become a story of freedom, awareness, and hope. So, thank you for sharing today.
Thank you for having me. I am very, very dedicated to this mission. I know what I went through, and if I can prevent somebody else the heartache and the hardships, I will.
No, you're most welcome. And to everyone listening, remember that if you feel stuck, confused, or broken by someone else's control, you are not alone. There are resources, there is healing, and your story can shift from survival to strength. This is Positive Vibes with Nicki Dennis. Until next time, may you choose courage, embrace healing, and walk forward in your power. Sending you all love and positive vibes. Bye for now.